When my husband told me, "It's just a work conference and spouses aren't invited," I didn't question it, until I stumbled upon the reservation details and discovered who he really brought with him. Imagine thinking you have the perfect life, a solid marriage, a partner you trust implicitly. Then, in one gut-wrenching scroll through social media, your entire world shatters. The man you swore vows to, the man who looked you in the eye and lied, was living a double life, caught red-handed in the most humiliating way imaginable. And let me tell you, the fallout? It was a symphony of desperation, denial, and ultimately, a powerful, satisfying comeuppance. So picture this. I'm ISA 28, grinding away as a marketing coordinator for a small tech startup. My life felt pretty stable, especially my marriage to Derek. We'd been married for 4 years, and yeah, we had our moments, our ups and downs, just like any couple. But I genuinely believed we were a team, committed to working through anything that came our way. Derek, he's in sales for a medical equipment company, and he's always been super ambitious. That drive, that determination, it was actually one of the things that first drew me to him. I respected it, truly. Last month, Derek told me about this huge work conference his company was sending him to in Las Vegas. 3 days, all about new medical tech and sales training. He was buzzing about it, talking about how it could really boost his career, maybe even land him that promotion he'd been eyeing. It's a huge networking opportunity. He told me over dinner one night, his eyes bright. The company's sending their top performers, and there are going to be some seriously important people there from other companies too. I was genuinely happy for him. He'd been working so incredibly hard lately, putting in crazy hours, dealing with some really tough clients. This conference felt like a well-deserved break, a chance for him to shine. About a week before he was supposed to leave, I casually asked if I could tag along. I'd never been to Vegas and I thought, hey, why not turn his work trip into a mini vacation for us? We could explore the city together when he wasn't tied up in meetings. But he just shook his head. I wish you could come, babe, but it's a work conference, he said, almost apologetically. Spouses aren't invited. Strictly business and they have a packed schedule. I'll barely have time to sleep, let alone sightsee. I was a little bummed, sure, but I understood. Work conferences can be intense, and I didn't want to be a distraction from something so crucial for his career. I told him I'd miss him, but that I was proud of him for representing his company. I'll make it up to you when I get back, he promised, giving my hand a squeeze. Maybe we can plan a real vacation soon. That promise, it felt so sincere at the time. But then, the week leading up to his departure, something shifted. Derek started acting different. He was suddenly super secretive with his phone, taking it to the bathroom with him, keeping it face down during dinner. When I asked about it, he just brushed it off, saying he was dealing with work emails about the conference and didn't want to be rude by checking his phone during our time together. And then there was the working out. He suddenly became obsessed, hitting the gym with an intensity I'd never seen from him before. It struck me as odd, because he'd never been particularly focused on fitness. When I commented on it, he just said he wanted to look professional for the conference, that he'd been feeling out of shape. I bought it, all of it. I wanted to believe him. Derek left for Las Vegas on a Thursday morning. I dropped him off at the airport, and he seemed this weird mix of excited and nervous. He kissed me goodbye, promised to text when he landed. The first day, communication was totally normal. He texted when his flight landed, sent a photo of his hotel room, even called me that evening to tell me about the opening ceremony. Everything felt fine. But Friday, that's when things started to unravel. His communication became sporadic. My texts would go unanswered for hours. And when he finally did respond, his messages were short, rushed. Saturday was even worse. I tried calling him twice and both calls went straight to voicemail. When I texted, asking if everything was okay, he responded 6 hours later, claiming he was in back-to-back meetings and would call me later. He never called. By Sunday, a knot of anxiety was tightening in my stomach. This wasn't like Derek at all. Even when he was swamped with work, he always found a moment to check in. I tried to convince myself he was just hyper-focused on the conference, on networking, but something felt deeply, fundamentally off. Sunday evening, Derek texted again. A brief message saying his flight was delayed, and he wouldn't be home until Monday afternoon. Again, no phone call. Just a text. That's when I decided. I needed to see what was happening. I went to social media, hoping to find posts from his company about the conference. I was curious, you know? I thought seeing some photos might help me feel more connected to what he was doing. And that's when I found Carmen's Instagram account. Carmen works in the same department as Derek. I'd met her a few times at company events. She seemed nice enough, though Derek had mentioned she could be a bit dramatic about posting everything. What I saw on Carmen's Instagram story made my stomach drop. My heart started pounding. There were multiple photos and videos from the conference, and in several of them I could clearly see other attendees with their spouses, their families. The conference, the one Derek swore was strictly business, apparently had a whole family track with special events for partners and even children. I scrolled through more posts, my hands shaking. Photos of the welcome reception, couples clearly enjoying dinner together. Pictures of a group tour of the Hoover Dam, specifically marketed as a spouse-friendly excursion. There was even a family pool party at the hotel on Saturday afternoon. Derek had lied to me. Spouses were absolutely invited. Many people had brought their families. I had been deliberately excluded. The betrayal hit me like a physical blow. My hands were trembling as I kept scrolling through Carmen's posts. And then I saw it. Something that made my heart stop completely. In one of Carmen's stories from Saturday night, there was a video of the hotel bar area. And in the background, clear as day, I could see Derek. He was sitting at a high-top table with a woman I didn't recognize. They were sitting incredibly close. And Derek? He had his hand on her lower back, in a way that screamed intimacy, not professionalism. I screenshotted that video immediately. My mind was racing, a cold dread spreading through me. I kept looking, frantically searching through other people's posts from the conference. Derek's company wasn't huge, so it wasn't hard to find other co-workers' social media accounts. On his colleague Brian's Instagram, I found more photos from Saturday night. And there he was again. Derek, clearly visible, dancing. With the same woman from Carmen's video. They look so comfortable together. Like a couple. But the most damning evidence, the final nail in the coffin, came from a woman named Vanessa Wong. I realized she worked for Derek's company, in the marketing department, according to her LinkedIn. Her Instagram was full of photos from the conference. And in her Saturday night photos, she was all over Derek. There were pictures of them sharing drinks, laughing together, and one photo where they were clearly posing as a couple, Derek's arm around her waist, her hand on his chest. I felt sick. My entire world tilted on its axis. Derek wasn't just at a work conference. He was essentially on a romantic getaway with this Vanessa woman, and he had lied to me to my face to make it happen. I started digging deeper into Vanessa's social media, and what I found confirmed my worst fears. Based on her posts, she and Derek had been interacting for months. There were comments on her photos from Derek that seemed undeniably flirtatious. She'd been liking and commenting on his posts in ways that screamed a closer relationship than just coworkers. Looking back at Derek's recent behavior, everything clicked into place. The secrecy with his phone, the sudden intense interest in working out, the way he'd been so distant lately. He'd been having an affair with this woman, and the conference? It was just an opportunity to take it to the next level. I was devastated, absolutely heartbroken, but more than that I was furious. A raw burning rage consumed me. Derek had looked me in the eye and lied about the conference rules. He'd let me feel bad about not being able to come, when the sickening reality was that he didn't want me there because he was planning to spend the entire weekend with another woman. I tried calling Derek immediately, straight to voicemail. I called 4 more times over the next hour. Same result. Finally I sent a text. I know Vanessa is there with you. We need to talk immediately. He didn't respond for 3 agonizing hours. When he finally called me back, his voice was laced with panic. I say I can explain everything. He blurted out before I could even say hello. Explain what, Derek? I shot back, my voice shaking with a mixture of anger and disbelief. Explain why you lied about spouses not being allowed? Explain why you're all over social media with some woman from your company? Explain why you've been ignoring my calls all weekend. He stumbled over his words. It's not what it looks like. Vanessa is just a colleague and we were networking with some potential clients. The photos are taken out of context. Out of context, Derek? I scoffed, a bitter laugh escaping my lips. I can see your hand on her ass in one of the photos. How is that taken out of context? There was a long, uncomfortable pause. You're looking at social media, I say. You're overreacting. These are just work events and sometimes alcohol is involved, and people get a little more social than usual. It doesn't mean anything. Don't you dare tell me I'm overreacting. My voice was rising now, trembling with indignation. You lied to me about the entire conference. Other people brought their spouses, Derek. I could have been there with you, but instead you chose to bring your girlfriend. She's not my girlfriend. God, I say you're being paranoid. Can we please talk about this when I get home? I can't have this conversation over the phone. Why can't you have this conversation now? I pressed, my voice tight with accusation. What exactly are you doing that's so important you can't talk to your wife? Another pause. In the background I could hear music and voices like he was at a party or a bar. I'm at a work dinner, he said finally. At 10 o'clock on a Sunday night? What work lasts until 10? I challenged. Look, I'll be home tomorrow afternoon, and we can sort this all out. You're jumping to conclusions based on some random social media posts. Random social media posts, Derek? These are from your own coworkers. And if it's so innocent, why didn't you tell me Vanessa was going to be there? Why didn't you mention that you'd be spending time with her? His response hit me like a slap. Because I knew you'd react exactly like this. You get jealous and suspicious over nothing, and I didn't want to deal with drama over a work trip. Jealous over nothing? My blood ran cold. Derek, you're in Las Vegas with another woman, lying to me about conference rules, and ignoring my calls all weekend. That's not nothing. We'll talk tomorrow, he said firmly, his voice suddenly hard. I'm not doing this over the phone. He hung up before I could even respond. I spent the rest of Sunday night and all of Monday morning in a blur, my fingers flying across my keyboard, going through every social media account I could find from people at that conference. The more I looked, the worse it got. Vanessa had posted photos of room service breakfast for two in what was clearly a hotel room. And there on the nightstand, clear as day, was Derek's company badge. There were photos of Derek and Vanessa at a restaurant on Friday night that looked distinctly like a date. Sitting on the same side of a booth, sharing food, and Vanessa had captioned it with a heart emoji. By the time Derek's flight was scheduled to land Monday afternoon, I had compiled dozens of photos and screenshots that painted an undeniable picture of him spending the weekend in a full-blown romantic relationship with Vanessa. But I also did something else that weekend. I called my friend Brianna, who works as a paralegal, and asked her to recommend a divorce attorney. I wasn't sure if I was ready to end my marriage, but I needed to understand my options. Monday afternoon, I met with attorney Holly Walsh. I brought all the social media evidence I'd collected, along with documentation of Derek's blatant lies about the conference. This is definitely grounds for divorce if that's the direction you want to go, Miss Walsh told me, her voice calm and reassuring. The evidence of infidelity is pretty clear, and the deception makes it even worse. But you should take some time to think about what you really want before making any final decisions. I want him to face consequences for what he's done, I said, my voice firm despite the tremor in my hands. I want him to understand that he can't just lie to me and cheat on me, and expect me to pretend it didn't happen. There are different ways to handle this, Miss Walsh explained. You could confront him and try marriage counseling, or you could file for divorce immediately. The choice is yours, but I'd recommend documenting everything and being prepared for either scenario. I left the attorney's office feeling more confident than I had all weekend. For the first time since I discovered Derek's lies, I felt like I had some control over the situation. Derek texted me when his flight landed Monday afternoon, saying he'd be home around 6. I spent the afternoon preparing. I printed out every single screenshot and photo I'd found, showing Derek with Vanessa. I organized them chronologically and laid them out on our kitchen table. Then with a deep breath, I placed the business card from Miss Walsh on top of the photos, along with a simple note that said, "We need to talk." I also called my friend Brianna and asked if I could stay at her place for a few days. I wasn't sure how Derek would react when he saw the evidence, and I wanted to be somewhere safe while we figured out what came next. At 6:15 I heard Derek's key in the door. I was upstairs finishing packing a small bag when I heard him call my name. I say I'm home. I heard his footsteps go to the kitchen, then complete silence for about 30 seconds. I say, he called again, but this time his voice was different. Panicked. I came downstairs to find Derek standing at the kitchen table, staring down at the photos. His face was pale and his hands were shaking slightly. "What is this?" he asked, though we both knew exactly what it was. "It's the truth about your work conference," I said, my voice surprisingly calm, almost detached. "The one where spouses weren't allowed, remember?" I can explain all of this," he pleaded, his eyes wide with a desperate fear. "Really?" I challenged, a bitter smile playing on my lips. "Can you explain why you're having breakfast in bed with Vanessa? Can you explain why you're dancing with her and posing like a couple? Can you explain why you lied to me about the entire conference?" Derek sat down heavily in one of the kitchen chairs, looking utterly defeated. "It's not what you think." "What do I think, Derek? You think I'm having an affair? Are you?" Another long, agonizing pause. "It's complicated." "No, it's not complicated," I retorted, my voice rising. "It's a yes or no question. Are you having an affair with Vanessa?" Derek looked at the photo spread across the table, then back at me, his gaze finally meeting mine. "Yes," he said quietly, barely a whisper. "But it's not serious. It just happened." I felt like I'd been punched in the stomach, even though I'd already known the answer. Hearing him admit it out loud, that was different. That was a knife twisting in the wound. How long? I asked, my voice barely audible. About 3 months. But I say it doesn't mean anything. I love you. I want to be married to you. Vanessa is just, I don't know. It was a mistake. A 3-month mistake, Derek? I scoffed, incredulous. You planned this conference as a romantic getaway with her. You lied to my face about it. How is that a mistake? I know how it looks, but it's not like that. Things with us have been difficult lately, and Vanessa was just someone to talk to. It got out of hand. Things with us have been difficult? I repeated, my voice laced with disbelief. What things? You know, we've been distant. We don't connect the way we used to. Vanessa understands my work stress in a way that you don't. I stared at my husband, trying to process the absolute audacity of what he was saying. So this is my fault? I asked, my voice dangerously quiet. I drove you to cheat because I don't understand your work stress? No, that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that sometimes people make mistakes when they're not getting what they need at home. What weren't you getting at home, Derek? What did I fail to provide that justified you lying to me and cheating on me? He hesitated, then mumbled, I don't know, attention maybe, admiration. You've been so focused on your own work lately, and we barely talk about anything except schedules and household stuff. A cold, furious rage built inside me, a feeling I'd never experienced before. So instead of talking to me about feeling disconnected, you decided to screw your coworker? Derek flinched at the language. Don't be crude, I say. Don't be crude, Derek. I shot back, my voice rising. You spent the weekend with another woman while lying to me about it. I think I'm allowed to be crude. Look, I know I messed up, but we can fix this. I'll end things with Vanessa and we can go to counseling. People work through affairs all the time. End things with Vanessa like it's just a business relationship you can terminate? I asked, my voice dripping with sarcasm. I mean, I'll cut off all personal contact with her. It'll just be professional from now on. You work together, Derek. You're in the same department. How exactly do you plan to cut off personal contact? We'll figure it out. The important thing is that I'm choosing you. I'm choosing our marriage. I looked at the photos spread across the table. Derek and Vanessa laughing together, dancing together, sharing intimate moments that should have been ours. Then I looked at my husband, who seemed to genuinely think he could just apologize and move on, like this was a minor misunderstanding. No, I said. Just one word. No what? He asked, his brow furrowed in confusion. No, we're not going to counseling. No, I'm not going to pretend this didn't happen. No, I'm not going to compete with your coworker for my own husband's attention. I say be reasonable. I made a mistake, but throwing away 4 years of marriage over it is extreme. He pleaded, standing up from the table. I'm not throwing away our marriage, Derek, I said, my voice steady, resolute. You already did that when you decided to lie to me and cheat on me. I'm just acknowledging what you've already done. I picked up my bag and headed toward the door. Where are you going? He asked, his voice cracking. I'm staying with Brianna for a while. You can have the house to yourself, just like you wanted. I say, please don't do this. Let's talk about it. We can work through this. I'm done talking, Derek. If you want to communicate with me from now on, you can do it through my attorney. I left Derek standing in our kitchen, surrounded by the undeniable evidence of his betrayal. The silence that followed me out the door was deafening. It's been a week since I walked out on Derek, and let me tell you, it's been a wild ride. The night I left, he started calling me immediately. Between 7 p.m. and 6 a.m., he called me 147 times. 147. I know the exact number because my phone kept the log, and I screenshotted it for my attorney. The voicemail started out apologetic, then became increasingly desperate, then angry, then swung back to pathetic apologies. In one, he was clearly crying. In another, he was yelling about how I was overreacting and destroying our marriage over nothing. The most pathetic voicemail came around 3 a.m. I say, please pick up. I know you're awake. I can see that you're reading my texts. I love you. I've always loved you. Vanessa means nothing to me. I'll do anything to fix this. Please don't throw away everything we've built together. I didn't respond to any of the calls or texts. Brianna, bless her heart, actually had to take my phone away from me at one point because I was obsessively reading his messages, just making myself more and more upset. On Tuesday, the drama escalated. Derek actually showed up at my office. My boss had to ask security to escort him out after he started causing a scene in the lobby, demanding to see me. He was telling everyone who would listen that I was having a breakdown and not thinking clearly. That very same day, he sent flowers to Brianna's apartment with a note that said, I'll wait as long as it takes for you to forgive me. Wednesday, he started contacting my friends and family, spinning this ridiculous tale that I'd misunderstood what happened at the conference and that he was worried about my mental health. My mom called me in tears, asking if I was having some kind of breakdown. I had to explain to my parents what actually happened, every painful detail. My dad was absolutely furious when he heard Derek had cheated and lied about it. He told me Derek had called him, claiming I was being irrational and asking him to talk sense into me. "That boy has some nerve," my dad said, his voice tight with anger. "Cheating on you and then trying to make it sound like you're the problem." On Thursday, I got a text from Derek saying that Vanessa had transferred to a different department and that he'd blocked her on all social media to prove his commitment to fixing our marriage. I immediately looked at Vanessa's Instagram and sure enough, she posted a story about starting a new chapter with photos of her packing up her desk. So apparently Derek had thrown her completely under the bus to try and save his own skin. Friday afternoon, Derek sent me a long rambling email detailing his plan for rebuilding trust in our marriage. It included couples counseling, individual therapy for him, complete transparency with his phone and social media, and a detailed schedule for how we could gradually reconnect. The email was 5 pages long and felt less like a heartfelt apology from someone who had betrayed his wife and more like a business proposal. I forwarded the email to Miss Walsh, who actually said it was helpful evidence for the divorce proceedings. "He's essentially admitting to the affair and acknowledging that he violated your trust," she explained. "This will make things much easier if he tries to contest anything." The thing that's frustrated me most about Derek's response through all of this is how he keeps trying to minimize what he did. In his mind, he made a mistake, and now he's doing everything right to fix it. He doesn't seem to grasp that the problem isn't just the affair. It's the lying, the manipulation, the complete and utter disrespect for our marriage. He lied to my face about the conference rules. He planned a romantic weekend with another woman while I was at home missing him. He ignored my calls and texts all weekend while he was with her. And when I confronted him, his first instinct was to gaslight me, to make me feel crazy for questioning him. That's not a mistake. That's a pattern of deception and manipulation that shows me exactly how much respect he has for me, and for everything we built. I've been trying to stay strong, but I won't lie, this week has been incredibly hard. 4 years of marriage doesn't just disappear overnight. And there are moments, fleeting ones, when I miss the good parts of our relationship. But then I look at those photos of Derek with Vanessa, and I remember how he looked me in the eye and lied about the conference, and I know deep in my gut that I'm making the right choice. It's been 3 weeks since I discovered Derek's affair, and things have taken several unexpected turns. First, the divorce proceedings are moving forward smoothly. Derek initially tried to contest it, claiming we should try counseling first, but Miss Walsh shut that down quickly. The evidence of infidelity is overwhelming, and Derek eventually agreed to an uncontested divorce. We're splitting assets fairly evenly since we don't have kids, and both have similar incomes. Derek tried to argue that he should get more because he's been the primary breadwinner. He makes about $8,000 more per year than I do, but that argument didn't go anywhere. But the most interesting development, the one that gave me a strange sense of satisfaction, has been the fallout at Derek's company. Remember how he claimed Vanessa had simply transferred to a different department? Well, it turns out that was only partially true. Last week, I got a Facebook message from Carmen, Derek's coworker, the one who had posted those Instagram stories that exposed his lies. She wanted to meet for coffee, to clear the air about something. At coffee, Carmen dropped a bombshell. Derek and Vanessa's affair had been an open secret at their company for months. Everyone knew they were involved, and several people had already raised serious concerns with HR about their behavior at work. They weren't subtle about it, Carmen explained, shaking her head. Vanessa would stay late whenever Derek was working late. They'd go to lunch together constantly. They were always finding excuses to travel together for client meetings. According to Carmen, the Las Vegas conference was the final straw for their company's HR department. Several employees had complained about Derek and Vanessa's unprofessional behavior at company events, and those photos from Vegas made it crystal clear that they were using work trips for personal purposes. The company has a strict policy about relationships between employees, Carmen said. They're supposed to disclose it to HR and follow certain protocols. Derek and Vanessa never did that. It turns out that when Derek told me Vanessa had transferred departments, what actually happened was that the company had given her an ultimatum: transfer or be fired for violating company policy. She chose to transfer to a different location rather than lose her job entirely. Derek, as the more senior employee, was given a formal reprimand and put on a performance improvement plan. He also lost the promotion he'd been working toward. He's not getting fired, but his career there is basically over, Carmen told me. Everyone knows what happened, and management has made it clear that he's not going to advance. Carmen also told me something that made my stomach churn. Apparently, Derek had been telling his coworkers that our marriage had been over for months, and that we were basically separated already. He'd been painting himself as a single man who was free to date whoever he wanted. "I'm so sorry," Carmen said, her voice genuinely remorseful. "If we'd known he was lying about being separated, some of us would have said something. We all thought you knew about Vanessa." Learning that Derek had been lying to his coworkers about our marriage hurt almost as much as discovering the affair itself. It showed that this wasn't just a momentary lapse in judgment. He'd been systematically deceiving everyone in his life for months. But Carmen also told me something that gave me a twisted, dark sense of satisfaction. Apparently, Vanessa has been calling and texting Derek constantly since her transfer, begging him to leave me and move to her new city so they can be together. And Derek? Now that he's facing real consequences for his actions, he's been ignoring her calls and trying to distance himself from the relationship. According to office gossip, he even told someone that Vanessa was getting too clingy, and that he'd never meant for things to get so serious. So Derek threw Vanessa under the bus to try and save his marriage, and now he's throwing her under the bus again to try and save his career. The man has no loyalty to anyone. Absolutely none. The second major development is that I've been contacted by Derek's ex-girlfriend from before we even met. Apparently, she'd heard about our divorce through mutual friends and wanted to reach out. Her name is Jessica and we met for lunch last weekend. She told me that Derek had cheated on her too with multiple women, and that his pattern of lying and manipulation was exactly the same. "He made me feel crazy," Jessica told me, her eyes reflecting a familiar pain. "He'd lie about things that were easily verifiable, then gaslight me when I questioned him. He'd make me feel like I was being paranoid and jealous, when I was actually just noticing obvious red flags." Jessica said that Derek had told her the same things he'd been telling me, that their relationship lacked excitement and connection, and that he found that connection with other women. She said he'd also used the same manipulation tactics, making her feel like his cheating was somehow her fault for not being a good enough girlfriend. "The worst part was how he'd act like the victim whenever I confronted him," Jessica said. "He'd cry and apologize and promise to change, but he never actually took responsibility for what he'd done." Hearing Jessica's story made me realize that Derek's affair with Vanessa wasn't an aberration. It was part of a deeply ingrained pattern. He's probably been cheating throughout our entire marriage, and I was just too trusting, too naive to notice the signs. It also made me feel incredibly grateful that I discovered the truth now, rather than wasting more years of my life with someone who was never, ever going to be faithful. It's been 2 months since I discovered Derek's affair, and our divorce was finalized last week. I wanted to share this final update because this community, you all, have been so incredibly supportive throughout this whole ordeal. The divorce itself was straightforward since Derek didn't contest it. We split our assets evenly, and Derek even agreed to pay for all the legal fees since the divorce was unequivocally caused by his infidelity. He also had to buy out my half of our house, which, let me tell you, gave me enough money to put a down payment on my own place that is entirely mine. Derek made one last desperate attempt to save our marriage the week before our final court date. He sent me a letter, an 8-page monstrosity, claiming he'd been in therapy and had learned so much about himself, and was ready to be the husband I deserve. The letter was full of therapy buzzwords about emotional intelligence and taking accountability, but it was also riddled with subtle blame shifting, suggesting that our marriage had problems that contributed to his decision to cheat. I didn't respond to the letter. There was nothing Derek could say, nothing he could do that would make me trust him again. I wasn't interested in being married to someone who would cheat on me, and then try to make it partially my fault. The most satisfying part of this whole experience has been watching Derek face the natural consequences of his actions. His career is effectively over at his current company. His pathetic relationship with Vanessa imploded when he threw her under the bus, and he's had to deal with everyone in our social circle knowing exactly what he did. Several mutual friends have reached out to tell me that Derek has been trying to spin the story, claiming that our marriage was already over, and that he didn't technically cheat, because we were emotionally separated. But since I have screenshots of all his social media posts showing him talking about our happy marriage just weeks before the conference, his lies aren't very convincing. Derek also apparently tried to get back together with Vanessa after our divorce was finalized, but she'd already started dating someone else and told him point blank she wasn't interested in being his backup plan. So Derek is now single, facing career consequences, and dealing with a reputation as someone who cheats on his wife and lies to his coworkers. All of which are the direct, undeniable results of his own choices. And honestly, it's a beautiful thing to witness. As for me, I'm doing really well. I bought a cute one-bedroom condo that's all mine. And I've been absolutely reveling in the freedom of making decisions without having to consider a partner who might be secretly lying to me. I've even started dating again, which feels strange after 4 years of marriage, but also incredibly exciting. I'm taking things slow, being very careful about red flags, but I'm optimistic about finding someone who will actually respect me and our relationship. The biggest lesson I've learned from this experience is to trust my instincts. There were signs, subtle ones, that Derek was cheating, the secrecy with his phone, the changes in his behavior, the way he'd been distant. But I ignored them because I wanted to trust my husband. Now, I know that trust has to be earned and maintained. Just because someone promises to be faithful doesn't mean they will be. And just because someone says they love you doesn't mean they'll treat you with respect. I'm incredibly grateful that I discovered Derek's true character before we had kids or bought more property together. 4 years feels like a long time to waste on someone who was lying to me, but it could have been so much worse. To anyone else out there dealing with a cheating partner, please trust your gut. Document everything. And for the love of all that is good, do not let them convince you that their betrayal is somehow your fault. You deserve better than someone who lies to your face and cheats on you, no matter what problems your relationship might have had. Derek had plenty of opportunities to talk to me about feeling disconnected or unhappy in our marriage. Instead, he chose to lie, cheat, and try to gaslight me when I discovered the truth. That says everything about his character, and absolutely nothing about mine. I'm excited to move forward with my life and find someone who will treat me with the respect and honesty I truly deserve.